Well, we actually started on this film in early 2015. I was really fascinated with the idea of advanced nuclear, and I discovered, I first decided I wanted to do this because I was worried about climate, and I was worried that the scientists said we need all energy technologies, including nuclear, and a big scale up of all clean energy technologies if we're going to be able to decarbonize and basically shut down, get off of fossil fuel at the rate and scale that's necessary to avoid, the worst effects of climate change. But if you look at the policy makers and what they were trying to do, and if you look at the advocacy groups and the so-called experts on clean energy, nuclear was generally absent. It was just about renewables. And if anything, it was about shutting down renewables as you were also shutting down fossil fuels, which, as we all know, in Germany certainly knows, you can't do both and continue to power your society. So I was really concerned that if we're not going to listen to what the scientists say, we're not going to succeed in avoiding climate catastrophe. And so that's why I felt like it was really important to make this film. And frankly, I was surprised nobody else was making this exact film, especially with the urgency of this issue. And interestingly, I was introduced to some people from SFEN very early on, and we came to France. We filmed at Flamanville and La Hague and elsewhere. I think it was in March or something like that of 2015. So that was one of our very first shoots. We continued filming. The last shoot we did there was at Idaho National Lab in the summer of 2016. And the first shoot was in January of 2015. So that was one of the, France really came through, SFEN really came through for us, and by extension, EDF and Arriva. So, so I mean, it kind of started here to some extent. And then we met Rauli actually here. We met here. Remember that?
Yeah, that's summer of 2015. Back when, in March, when you were starting up with your documentary, I was translating Climate Gamble to English to be published in Paris at the Young Generation meeting and later that year we translated it to French for the COP21.
And I remember Rauli and Jana, I don't think any of the footage is in the film, but when we were at the ENYGN conference in, what was that? That was June of 2015. And I remember Rauli told me his strategy was follow the guys with the cameras. So, and it worked.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah.
So does anyone have a question now? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the movie. It's a great movie. I'm sorry, but we are all in this room convinced already. And it is said in your movies that we have to convince politicals. And so my question is, when do you show this movie to politics?
Well, you know what's really funny is that I'm definitely the furthest thing from a Donald Trump fan, but at our world premiere on Saturday, we had the person who was his campaign manager in Indiana, who is now the chief of staff for the Nuclear Energy Office in the U.S. Department of Energy, at the film. She wanted to come. She asked us for a ticket. She came. She wants these people to come to Washington. She wants screenings. She even asked me if she could have parts of the film to put on their social media. And I told her, we're making America great again. This is making America great again. I don't know about what you guys are doing, but we could definitely use your support. We need more money for research. We need to get our licensing regime together because this is really important. We need to invent a new industry here. And I think that this is all about getting the politicians involved and showing a vision, capturing their imagination, capture everybody's imagination. It's a story that I think is pretty important and should resonate with most people, especially young people who plan on being around for a long time or is living as long as they can and maybe having children that will live a long time and might want to enjoy a good standard of living. So politicians' mandate is to provide, to defend the lifestyles and defend the country and to provide leadership on that side. And this film, I think, the intention was to not point fingers and not to be, say you're on the left or you're on the right, this is good, this is bad, but we're all in this together and everybody wins if we do the right thing. So get them involved early. What do you think, Rauli? That's not really, you already have the politicians in there in Finland. It's going kind of.
You're working on it.
You're working on it.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. But I think we need to take this film to Finland as well and have a screening there.
Okay.
So.
Do you think the politicians in France would respond to this message? It's pretty U.S.-centric. I don't know. What do you think?
They could, yes. They could respond to this movie. The guy just asked you a question about, it's Julien.
Hey.
Hi. We discussed together before. You didn't answer clearly the question, or didn't understood your answer. Are you gonna commercially release that movie soon, or is it gonna be a free media on YouTube or is it gonna be a free movie, or is it gonna be a movie released on commercial?
It's gonna be very expensive. Very expensive movie. This could be the most expensive movie that there ever has been, the highest price, not to produce, but just to see it. We're going to charge more money to the politicians to see it.
Okay.
But seriously, okay, so here's where we are right now. It's an independent film. So if we had like Canal Plus or whoever said, we're going to make a movie, we want you to make it, here's a suitcase full of money, go make it, then you've got distribution, obviously, because Canal Plus just gave you the money. But the reason we have film festivals, for the most part, is because, and we're going to go to our international premiere. So we had our world premiere in Indianapolis. We're going to go to Cambridge on Friday night for the world premiere, or the international premiere, which so in the world of film festivals, everything's a premiere, except for this. This is kind of a secret. But, if we went to, like, London after Cambridge, it would be like the London premiere, because it couldn't be the UK. Anyway, or it could be the south of Cambridge premiere, maybe. But in any case, the reason you have film festivals is because it's the market for the films. Any of these film festivals, I think Cambridge probably had about 3,000 films submitted, and they probably took about 200 or so, something like that, 150. So they triage it down. They curate the number of films. So then the market gets to see sort of what they consider the best films that were submitted. And then you go from one festival to the next to the next. You get a little bit of press. So in Cambridge, I was interviewed for a podcast called Bums in Seats, which is kind of a funny name, but Bums in Seats, which means an audience. You guys are all, not to be disparaging, but you're bums in seats here. In the U.S. we say asses in seats, but we're much more coarse than that, so the British are very cute about it. But that's great. And so I did a podcast. There's a big article about it, about the film, a review, and so forth. And that happens, we're going to go from there. We're going to be playing in a bunch of U.S. festivals, and we're just getting started. The festivals kind of wind down in November through the holidays through January, and then there'll be more. And so then what you're doing is developing a provenance, and you're developing sort of a following, a little bit of press. So then when the market comes to you and you get what's called a sales agent, which is essentially like an agent selling your film to various distributors all over the world, whether it's broadcasters or whatever, it de-risks it a little bit for them, because it costs a lot of money. They got to give me a suitcase full of money, because the other people we charge a lot are the distributors. So they're going to have to pay us a lot of money too, or not. But seriously, as much as we could get, at least something, right? Can you give me a couple bucks at least? But seriously, What happens is that's when the commercial release would happen. We're in the marketplace. You know, the distributors begin to have these conversations. Then you go into commercial release. So absolutely, my intention is to have this film in front of as many eyeballs as possible, all across the world. You know, every channel all at the same time. So if you're watching television, you can't escape it, and your television won't turn off because we'll have some special bug in it that you can't turn it off. And that's what we're going to do. But that won't be for another, like, till 2018 or sometime. So it's really exclusive. So, I mean, if you think it's, I don't know, if you like it, then it's kind of a big deal. You got to see it today because nobody else, it's only been screened for a couple hundred other people other than you guys. And it's only going to be screened when I'm there every time until it becomes commercially released. And then we go crazy and everybody starts throwing money and all kind, hopefully not too much else at us.
You talked about Minneapolis or Annapolis or
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, and what was the insights? Like the people from the business, did they say that it could work and it will be appreciated by the population? Or, I don't know. Can you give us some things that you have, like, feedbacks from the Indianapolis festival?
Well, what was really amazing was, first of all, I wasn't there for the screening. My flight was delayed because there was bad weather, so I only got there for the Q&A, the question and answer like this, partway through. Fortunately, we had Eric Meyer, the singer, was there. We had Nick Turan, the bald guy from Terra Power, was there. We had Tom Blees was there. We had Per Peterson from UC Berkeley, professor, was there, and my wonderful executive producer, Ross Koningstein, was there. So they were able to answer a lot of questions and doing a great job. And when I got there, I, you know, kind of tried to keep up to them. But the questions that people were asking was, how can I get involved? What can I do? What's a good nuclear engineering school? Which is kind of surprising because usually at a film festival, people are like, so what was it like going to China and filming there or something like that? We're talking about impact. That film made an impact right there. And fortunately, Eric's group was there, Generation Atomic, to sort of say, well, here's our website, and here's where you can download our app and sign up, and you'll be on our email list. And now they're engaged. So there's an audience for this. I mean, just because the people in the United States, the anti-nuclear people are old folks. They're old. They're from they're hippies or whatever, old hippies. And this is for young people, this film, because it's their future we're talking about. And I think, at least in the United States, they see things a little differently. And I think this film, I guess, resonated. I thought it was pretty good. Hopefully it continues. I don't know. I hope so.
And in the same kind of questions, I have a question for Rauli. That when you were in the subway in Paris, what was the reaction of the people? Because we saw some faces, so we can imagine things. But did you talk with them, and how did they get the song and the book distribution?
We didn't talk a lot with the people in the subways because they were mostly French-speaking people, and my French is poor at best. But while I had some conversations, for example, in the place to be, which is the hostel that we stayed for the week or week and a half, in there the discussions were mostly quite civic. Of course, there was a couple of people who were vehemently anti-nuclear and didn't even want to discuss it, but they were like 1% of the people there, so a handful. With the rest, if you make a one-on-one conversation about it, and if you're being honest and sharing your values and finding some common values with the other people, the person you're talking with, it can be really productive and eye-opening for both of you, but especially for people who get new information on a subject that they have been told well, maybe lies or half-truths for years and years. And this is something that Eric Meyer is doing in the States. He's having thousands and thousands of personal communications with people. They're going from door to door, knocking on doors, and can we talk about nuclear power?
And he's getting paid by the industry to do that.
He is, yeah. And he's doing great.
It's a living.
It's a very work-intensive thing to do, so it's expensive because people are expensive compared to machines.
Well, he needs to eat. These guys have to eat, and the people with money to pay are the plants that are the utilities. They're in danger of having their plants closed down. So they figure, well, let's pay these guys a few $1,000. They're cheap. They'll go door to door. And that's not all he wants to do. This is, I think, really what Eric is interested in this future stuff. But you got to get paid. So if that's what he can get paid to do, then why not, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I came for the COP21 in Paris, I stayed here like 11 days or something like that. And we had a crowdfunding campaign that was open for everybody, open for people, open for the industry, for companies, for whatever. And we didn't get paid for our time, but we used the money to pay for the expenses, so we didn't have to pay from our own pocket to print 5,000 copies of the book or the flights and staying and eating and stuff like that. We got money from Arriva. We had a presentation at their nice headquarters. Here, really dark tower in my sense, but and it doesn't change the message at all. And yeah, we need to eat, but I also understand that some people don't want to take money from the industry because the argument, even if it's stupid, that you're taking money from the industry, so we cannot trust you. It's a really poor argument, but some people use it and it works for many audiences. It distracts the conversation because then you have to start explaining that no, this and this and this. I actually liked your approach. It's a stupid question. Next question, please. Ask me something intelligent. And for me, I've started to think about it as if somebody says that to me, then I'm right. They have run out of sensible arguments, and I'll just, okay, I won, you lost.
It's true, because, I mean, look at Friends of the Earth. Where'd they get their money from? The oil industry. Look at NRDC. They get funding from fossil fuels in the United States. EDF, Environmental Defense Fund in the United States, has gotten funding from the oil industry. And I think actually, someone told me, I have to look into it, but I was told that NRDC actually has some of its endowment invested in fossil fuels. So, which makes sense because fossil fuel companies love renewables because you have to have fossil fuels running, unless you have nuclear, you gotta have something running in the background just in case. So it's kind of like you can pollute the environment and cause climate change without even creating any electricity. Hey, how about that? So that's bad. That's bad. There's nothing wrong with taking money from the nuclear industry. What are they doing wrong? What's wrong with that? You know, what's wrong with the nuclear industry? Explain that.
I got a quick question, just right here. You show in the movie the first image of The Simpsons and the Chinese syndrome, which isn't a really whole movie. But basically, those movies are enter everybody's culture. From the very beginning, when we are young, we see these movies, and lots of people know that it's not totally true, but they understand that nuclear is dangerous. It's green light that can explode everywhere. So from their childhood, and what can be done to change that? Because from the very beginning, they see pictures showing nuclear is really dangerous, which is not really true, and everything's false come to their mind really, when they are really young.
Nuclear power is sort of a miracle technology because at the same time it can be dangerous and the safest
but like any energy
way to make electricity.
I have an answer. It has to do with the title of the film, The New Fire.
Yeah.
Think about, I don't know, when did they man start using fire, like 500,000 years ago or so? I don't know when it was, but a long time ago. And fire must have been pretty scary for some people. People must have not understood that. They must have thought, whoa, what's going on? And you could use fire for terrible things. You could burn down somebody's house. You could build a bomb. You could do any number of things with fire, right? But you could do wonderful things with fire. You cook on it, keep your house warm, drive a car, all kinds of things. The thing is, fire is basically chemical bonds are changing. It's exothermic chemical reaction. In a nuclear reaction, it's what is it? What do you call atomic bonds, or what do you call it? I should know. This sounds pretty bad.
It's called nuclear energy.
When you split the atom, the bonds that hold this force of whatever it is. Anyway, that bond is what's breaking. So it's just going down one level, and you're getting a lot more energy. So you can use it for good, or you can use it for bad. You can use it to power the lights here in the TGV, or you can use it to for atomic weapons and to destroy the planet, And I think people think about the destroying the planet part a lot more than they do think about the good use of it. And we got to stop burning things in this planet. So that means humanity, you see, we got into this mess because of technology. When we started burning coal and burning fossil fuels, that's how that's how the West became prosperous, really, was by the work was not being done by humans, it was being done by machines. But the bad part was we got, climate change and pollution. So now we've got even better technology. It's nuclear, and there's been some problems with it, but as we say in the film, if you think about it, it's the safest form of energy in the world. You have more people dying every single day, today, tomorrow, the next day. More people will die each day than have died in the entire history of nuclear energy. So you can't compare, that's more people die from solar energy than from nuclear energy per kilowatt hour produced. So I don't like trumpeting that around because it's not a big deal, right? It's just that nuclear is that safe. Nuclear is that safe. And we got to get off of this whole thing about, that's got to become part of the narrative, is like radiation. So what? You go in an airplane. I just flew here. What's interesting is I got about 2.8 millirem of exposure, something like, does that sound right, up in an airplane? And I think Fukushima, in the exclusion area there, it's about 3.2 millirem. It's about the same amount of background radiation at Fukushima as you get when you're flying in an airplane to New York or to Paris. So I think people just got to dial down the hysteria a little bit, and because sure, we should all be afraid of nuclear energy and nuclear, if you're working in a plant, if you're working in recycling, at La Hague, if you're working, refueling reactors, you're handling fissile materials, you've got to be very careful. There's something to be worried about if you make a mistake or you're not careful. Absolutely, accidents can happen. But that's an accident that might happen, it's hypothetical. If we don't decarbonize this planet, it's a certainty that this planet will be ruined for future generations of humanity. That's a certainty. So I'm a lot more afraid about that than I am a risk of some hypothetical nuclear accident.
Just to go back to my question, it was really not about the rational thinking about that. It was more about how do you come to the young age. Like you saw our new movie, the girl who was like 12 or something like that. They don't know, like really young. That was speaking to I don't recall his name, but she don't know how nuclear works, and lots of people don't. And those movies that are shown like how nuclear is supposed to be represent a false image of it, and a dangerous. It seems always not being controlled. And I was wondering how, to you, we can so to say, change people's mind about that, saying to them, okay, that's not the right representation of a nuclear, that's just a movie. A nuclear power plant is not just mirrors with light bulbs at the center of it, like in the last X-Men movie.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I tried to approach it in a different way and tell a positive story here, and there's not a lot of positive stories. Nuclear industry is terrible at, you should be proud standing on the table saying, we got the best form of energy, what are you complaining about? You guys are nuts. You should be more worried about fossil fuels and shutting that down. You shouldn't come after us. That's just ridiculous. What are you trying to destroy the planet? Because that's what's happening. Look at what's happening in Germany. They should be ashamed of themselves. That's, people in France are dying prematurely because of coal pollution from Germany. That's outrageous. You know, that's an outrage, and that is outrageous. So I don't know what's going on in this industry. I mean, you guys are just, you got to get it together, because this is not, you know, you got to defend yourself, and we got to populate positive narratives, and that hopefully this will help. I don't know.
I've been giving some workshops and presentations about nuclear communications. I actually read a book that was published in 1970s, so 40 years ago. It's about as old as me. And in that book, I read that at this point, the nuclear industry decided that we will shut up about ourselves. And they've been doing that for 40 years. And on the other hand, the nuclear people would like to see themselves as evidence-based and rational and pragmatic and all that, right? Well, there is 40 years of evidence that shutting up about nuclear power is not working. 40 years of evidence. So you need to see that evidence and you need to step up. I know it's hard. The communications environment for nuclear industry is horrible. Which is, it's much less horrible for me because I'm not from the industry, which is why I am stepping up. But you guys need to follow. Start small, but start conversing on dinner that, yeah, you work at a nuclear power plant or you do nuclear research and you're actually very proud because you're one of the best solutions we're going to have to save this planet.
It's the best kept secret in climate mitigation and energy. It's a little thing called nuclear. Shh.
In COP21 2 years ago, it was the first time that nuclear was even discussed during any climate meetings.
It was kind of relegated off to the side. It was like sort of discriminatory. You kind of got put, you're at the back of the bus, you know. You're at the back of the bus with the greatest climate scientists that there are, unimpeachable, you know, in the world. But because they're talking about nuclear, they get put sort of off in the sort of commercial zone there. We couldn't screen this film at COP23. There was no movie theater in Bonn that was going to put a nuclear propaganda film. They hadn't even seen it. But as soon as they find out it's about nuclear in Germany, they're not even going to allow it to be, they wouldn't take our money to screen it. I mean, that's just
Germans
nuts.
Are special.
They're special. They just want to keep killing the French with their emissions and keep it going by not spreading the truth about, or even listening to a different point of view, or just take the damn money, for goodness sake. Who cares? What happened to capitalism? Jeez. I'm just joking, guys. Sorry.
But also, oh, sorry. I can give you the microphone if you want. Just to finish, just to say something about the public opinion. Also in France, what we have is not necessarily negative people about nuclear. They just have no opinion. They just realize, like, we have it. It's not expensive. Actually, they're really pragmatic. It's not expensive. My bill is twice less than Germany. It's okay. But you have a very small amount of people, hardcore people, that are really against, and those are really heard and seen, and it's really hard to fight against them, like Greenpeace or stuff like that. And I don't know how the nuclear can really get serious about those guys, because they seems to be right all the time, and not.
Well, I think you just answered your own question now, because you said most people aren't even don't have an opinion and don't really think about it too much. So go to them. Don't argue with a fool, or else you look like a fool arguing with them. You know, go talk to people and tell them, here's what's happening. We've decarbonized this country and set an example, and it's a case study for the rest of the planet of how we can address climate change, and we did it with nuclear. Now we're in danger of losing that and losing our leadership position and going in the same path that Germany's going in, which is proving France is a case study for how to solve climate change. Germany's the opposite case study. And the difference is what the delta is what happened with nuclear. That's the message you got to tell. I mean, talk to people about climate change that are worried about it. Like, are you worried about it? Well, we're leaders. You may not know it. It's the best kept secret in France and in the world, but you know, you're the leaders, and you're about to lose this thing. You're going to lose it if you guys don't stand up and find an audience. Find an audience of people who care about climate that aren't a bunch of anti-nuclear fanatics. And there's not that many of them. You just said that. So there's tons of people out there. Go talk to them. Get a new audience to back you. I mean, you're at pretty low numbers now, so it's pretty wide open. You know, so there's a lot of fish in the sea there for you, I think.
So yeah, I got a question for you that is quite related to what you said. Anyway, thanks and congrats for your great movie. My question is about, so the startup that you presented are Americans, right? So do you have any knowledge, or in your investigations, did you notice any startup or something like that, or in another country than the US? I don't know, in Europe or in Asia? Because yeah, it's kind of a shame to see that France is supposed to be I don't know, one of the pioneer in the field of nuclear and carbon-free electricity. And do you have any knowledge of startup in nuclear in Europe or something like that?
Well, to start at the last part, I mean, we went and visited CEA Saclay, and we learned about Astrid and all of that. And that's kind of like a really modern version of like the IFR program in the US. It's just a question of how do you commercialize something like that. I mean, that might be a really complicated design. I don't know too much. If, you know, it seems like they're not really rushing to get that out. But I don't know what's happening in France particularly, but I do know you have a tremendous research base, tremendous talent. You have all of the, you know, you have more going for you in this country than any other country I can think of, with the exception of the United States. But on one hand, you know, you've got a grid that relies on, you know, you have advantages in the United States, I think, here. But I mean, you got Moltex in the UK, you got terrestrial energy is in your study, that they're disposable.
They're from Canada.
Yeah, they're Canadian.
But they have a presence here, and I think there's some startup in Denmark, of all places. There's actually two startups.
Isn't there one that's called Cold something? It's
Lead Cold. Yeah,
Lead
that's
Cold.
a Swedish one.
There's one. Yeah. There's one that's like a that's small. It's kind of like Oklo. It's like a small nuclear battery type of thing.
They got a bunch of money, like 200 million, from an Indian investor that wanted to get exposed to nuclear advanced reactors. So there's some, but I think that in Europe, and especially in France, it's a bit more state-driven, because the state owns EDF mostly and stuff like that. So it maybe pushes the startups kind of to the side, because they are handling the space.
Yeah, because that's why I was wondering, because obviously in your movie, the startup that you're talking about, except TerraPower, that was actually the only I knew, because it's a startup, but like Bill Gates startup, because it's kind of different. But the two other ones, like Oklo and the other one, it's more about the size and the way to see the research and the R&D and stuff. Because as you said, in France, obviously we had like a huge R&D power about Astrid and fast reactors and things like that. But yeah, it's like state and companies owned, so big logistic and like old-fashioned way of thinking the research. So that's why, yeah, what you show is kind of new. To see startup and nuclear in the same sentence is kind of nice.
The thing that I think the European nuclear research is not going for commercialization, it's going for adding more safety, or maybe wondering what to do about the waste. Well, dig a hole and put it there. So that's a difference. If you design for commercial power, then you get commercial reactors. But if you design for something else, then you're just wasting money and years and years and years of talented research time and getting something that's not commercial in the end.
Yeah, a big problem in the United States is our regulatory regime is basically there's no path. It's set up for proven large-scale utility reactors, pressurized water reactors, boiling water reactors, and even if you're NuScale, which is a light water technology that's a small modular, they've had to get something like 17 exclusions so far, and that's a light water technology, and so they're worried about the customers and what the customers are going to think about having, since they had to get all of these exclusions, and it's this prescriptive system. The licensing system is basically. You need a licensing system for, okay, I'm developing a technology, I'm not at nth of kind, I don't even have a customer, let alone a site or anything like that. I just want to be able to go and get a customer and say, so far, the government has approved this, we're licensed, like this has gotten the, we're good to go, so if you invest in us, you know, you've already got that validation. That doesn't exist in the United States right now, whereas in Canada, for example, I know, second greatest country in the world to me personally. They have a great sort of risk-based licensing regime in mind. So it's kind of funny because the guy from the CEO of Terrestrial was telling me, who's British, that Britain and Canada have better licensing regimes and so forth, but the money's all in the United States. But the United States doesn't have the good licensing regime. So it's kind of, you don't have everything, the total package in any one country right now. So whoever gets that is going to really, be onto something big.
I think one last question, if you can be short and the answer.
Yes, I will be short. As it has been said, we are here in the public where we all know that nuclear is more a solution than a problem. But I think that there could be, with other publics, some misunderstanding. Because you are focusing on those startups, and it's very good for us to see those young people working on new solutions with the global idea that small could be beautiful. But for other public, there could be an understanding of that the way we are doing nuclear by now, nuclear energy by now, with pressure water reactor and with a big project like Aspect, is wrong. And it's not the case, in fact. We need those, the way we are working now on those big projects. And so, of course, these new ideas could be good, but we cannot oppose these two type of developments.
I'm actually really glad that you did not sort of have this conflict with current generation reactors and new generation reactors. I got your point, and I know that some of the industry has been a bit worried about that people get excited only about these, and I know of some reactor companies and people working them who are actually putting them against and saying that this is safer than their light water reactor and implying that it's not safe, which is untrue. It's the safest technology that we have currently available. But I wouldn't be too worried about it, especially if this movie, it didn't make that conflict. Of course, for story reasons, it concentrated on the exciting thing that's coming up, the new generation. And for me, that's a storytelling thing that you do, because if you diverge to every direction, then you lose the story. But for example, for me, the IFR was my gateway drug to nuclear. If that was the thing that got me excited about nuclear. I read a book about it, this Prescription for the Planet by Tom Cleese, who was also in the documentary. Great book, and it gave me hope about the climate situation. And after that, I started to look more generally into nuclear as well, and noticed that, okay, fine, the current fleet is excellent. I have nothing against that. And since then, I've been fighting to keep the plants open wherever they are in danger. We have been campaigning in Switzerland and Sweden and wherever there's been a bad situation. We're going to go to Bonn to tell them not to close them down prematurely and stuff like that. So, yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about that, but it's something that some people I have seen use, and whenever I see that, I tell them, don't do that. It's wrong.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to build on that, I would say that I wanted people to experience this sort of journey of discovery that I had. I mean, this is the fun part about making this movie is I meet Rauli, I'm like, hey, I like hanging out with Rauli, why don't we film him? And, you know, now you're in the movie. You know, it's kind of like, I do what I want to do. It was a great journey, and it was kind of really kind of indulgent in a way. But what happens is I want people to experience this discovery the way that I do. And I hate to say it, but the existing fleet of nuclear, and nobody's going to get excited about that. You're not going to get people really excited about that. Or if you do, you're doing a hell of a job telling a story better than I can. But when you say, well, guess what? We got new types of reactors we're working on that can't melt down. Wow, okay, tell me more. Now I'm interested. A lot of people, now you got people interested. There's no other way they're going to get interested in nuclear than that. So they're kind of that gateway drug. And for me, that's what kind of got my attention. And then eventually it was like I started wanting to learn more and more. And then I realized like the existing nuclear plants that there are already the safest form of energy that there is. And that's great that these new ones can't melt down. But, you know, if you're already that safe, how much, the safety issue isn't even really relevant at that point. But I think it's like a concept car. If you go to, do you have car shows here where you have automobiles and you're seeing all the new cars and you have a concept car there? Why do they have the concept car that they're never going to build? Or it's like a fashion show where they have you know, where they have the clothes that the models are wearing, the couture or whatever. Now I sound like an idiot in Paris talking about fashion. But you have the models wearing clothes that they would never sell those clothes, but it's just to sort of get the attention. That's what, you got to celebrate this advanced nuclear and celebrate its benefits because it's going to get attention, and you need attention in this industry desperately. So, and nobody in that space is your enemy. Nobody is.
I would, one more small addition. You need to get young people interested in nuclear, and this is something that will get them interested in nuclear, and then they will work for a light water reactor.